I found with these before, the best thing is to remove these A-pillar trims first with these little ones down the bottom here. You can do both sides at once. Once those are out of the way, then these dashboard trims will pull out because this one is retained underneath here. But the first thing, predictably, because there's an airbag in behind there, is to disconnect the 12-volt battery if you haven't already. These A-pillar trims are just clipped in, so judicious use of the plastic trim removing tool, and it will pull out in this direction away from the A-pillar. Battery's been disconnected for some time already, so nothing will happen that's untoward. These higher trim levels have a little tweeter speaker in here, which you can see the wiring. Going to pull this down gently till I can get to the speaker connector, and then we should just be able to withdraw the trim. You can see the airbag hiding up inside the roof headlining here. This trim just needs to pull out. Nothing fancy to it, just some plastic clips. So I'm going to park that to one side with the A-pillar trim and carry on from there. The tweeter's on a very standard multi-plug, just have to push the release part in, and then that will pull out from the tweeter. Now that that's done, this trim's free to come away. And then this vent that I removed the single screw from here a few moments ago, that's now free to come out as well. Again, nothing fancy, just a bit of a tug to free off these metal clips, making sure that it's clear of what was the A-pillar trims, and we'll go and do the other side. It's exactly the same as the other side, so the plastic trim removal tool, the short Phillips headed screwdriver, and the slightly stronger clip retaining tool, and we'll have this out in a jiffy. Got to pull the rubber door seal away first. You can see the wiring that I've got up in here for the hardwired dash cam that I've got in it, but that will stay there. I can always tape it in the meantime before the A-pillar trim goes back on. So we'll just pop this bottom trim out first, then we'll take the A-pillar, and then we'll take this out. Using the ubiquitous plastic trim retaining tool, you can just lever up this end. Once it's up, it's a very straightforward job just to unclip it and pull it clear. And then to the A-pillar. The fuse panel cover trim has to come out. Obviously the other side it was already taken out from removing the glove box. The two sides are slightly different, so have to take this lower panel out before we can take the vent trim out, but we're making progress. This under dash panel that needs to come out, obviously there's lots of wiring in behind it. The USB port and the trigger for the TPMS reset have to be removed as well. This actually hides very slightly behind the plastic trim here, so this one just lifts up and out of the way too. It's just clipped in, so nice and easy to lift up, and make sure there's plenty of room. Of course, to get the knee panel trim out, have to get the under panel out, and it's held in with a couple of these clips which have a rotating screw fitting so that you can then release them, and then once they're released, like this one, you can see it's just hanging down slightly, then it's just a simple job to pull it out, and then the trim should pull away. I'm not going to bother taking it all the way out because it's clear of what we need to do, so it can stay there for refitting. If you want to take it out, there's just a little plastic retaining nut on there that just needs undoing, and then the whole trim will come clear, can be put to one side ready for the rebuild. I thought I'd show you this for those that do want to take the panel right out. It's got this plastic retaining nut on the threaded section in there. It looks like it needs a spanner, but because it's not done up tight and it's a good size, you can just twist it off with your fingers, and then the trim will just pull away. Not sure if you can see there we go. There's the retaining spike it was all on. Trim's now out for those that want to do it that way. So there's a screw here underneath the bonnet release. Obviously on older cars you'd also have the charging flap release, but this is AZE0, so it has the electronic charging flap. So just the bonnet release down here. We'll pop this screw out, and then the knee panel should just pop out, all things being equal. the clips that hold the tire pressure monitoring system trigger plug and the OBD2 plug are quite easily dealt with. You can see in there there's a plastic tag, same up the top here, plastic tag. Just going to tweak those out of the way, and then the plugs will both just push through the dash and they'll wait there for when we put this panel back. Predictably, there's a whole host of electrical connectors. The bonnet release cable needs to come away. These are the two that I just freed off, but I need to do all of these others, and the bonnet release cable and the other connectors on the back here all need to be disconnected so we can get this panel clean out of the way, and then on to the next step. For me, I actually found it easier to just remove the 4 retaining screws that hold this whole switch block into the knee panel. The switch block can stay here, knee panel I'll take away. The switch blocks come away very easily, saves a whole load of unplugging and then having to re-identify the sockets afterwards. So I'll just do the second one and then go on. There's an assortment of electrical connectors this side for the start button and for the interior aircon, temperature, etc. That aircon sensor down there, that's actually worth popping out and blowing clear in case it's got some dust in it, because the dust can build up and it dulls the reactions of the automatic air conditioning. All of the multi-plugs here are different, so they only go a pack in one place. Not going to need to label them at all. The air pipe just slides off the aircon interior temperature sensor, and underneath it you can see there's a screw, so I'm going to pop that out, blow it out with some compressed air now, and then I can just put it back in this dash panel so that when we're ready to rebuild it'll all be working perfectly. So here's the sensor. It's just a hot wire sensor, and you can see if the camera stays in focus it's got a little crud all over it, so I'm going to clean that off and that will improve its responsiveness when it goes back in. That's cleaned up, ready to go back in. You can see it's a much better looking sensor. It's going to work a lot better now. I have to confess the bonnet release cable is putting up too much of a resistance. It's too hot for me to be bothered to fight it, and because this panel actually comes down way lower than the dash, I'm going to change the plan slightly, leave this panel in here. Screws are here ready to refit into the switch block when I rebuild the car afterwards. So now that we've got this knee panel out the way, we're ready to look at removing this vent panel. Obviously there'll be more multi-plugs to disconnect from behind here. There's a little clip in the bottom here which I'm going to ease with a clip retaining tool, and then the trim panel should just pull out of the dashboard. So like the other side, once the retainer is undone, it was a screw that side, I clip this side, it just swings out and away. This one rather nicely has one multi-plug to deal with all of the wiring, so that'll be very easy to disconnect, and I'll tuck this out of the way until we're ready to reassemble. So time to deal with the trims over the instrument console. These are supposed to just clip out as with the rest of the car. So with the faithful removing tool, I'm just going to persuade this up and away. You can see how this is sliding in nicely, and you can hear the clips releasing, but I'm going to need both hands. Okay, now that I've got the first end levered up, I can show you much more easily. Just got some retaining clips that need to be gently teased away from the dashboard, and then the whole trim can be pulled together. There we go. This kind of cheese wedge shaped panel is also just clipped in. So again, with the trusty plastic trim removing tool, just going to ease it up. Going to need both hands again just to get it going, and then we'll show you the rest. I just leave it here on the two sides very gently, both sides with the trim tool, and now that it's free at the front here, it just slides out, exposing the upper dash panel, which only has one screw holding it in. There'll be a multi-plug behind it there obviously, but that's very straightforward to remove, so onwards and upwards. Okay, the screw's removed. This is supposed to just pull away. It's got a couple of little retaining tabs on it. There's one clip on it that had to be pulled clear of the dashboard, so that's fine. Now I can just tuck this down through this hole and it's out of the way when we slide the dash panel out of the way. I've saved the best till last. This center panel, can you believe, is just clipped on, but after you've undone the clips, there will be obvious a couple of little almost hook-like things in there that keep the panel roughly in position while you're lining it up to put it back. At the moment, the head unit stays where it is, so we just need to pry this trim panel away from the dashboard, pull it in this direction, and then we can think about undoing the connectors for the switches and unhooking the side kind of retainers, can't think of a better word for them, and then that will just pull away. Because I'm going to need to lie it down on its face to do the multi-plugs, I've already put a cloth here on the gear selector so that I don't go scratching anything here. You'll have to just trust me on this. It is this easy. There's room to get a hand in underneath, and then you can just work your way around, pulling away the retaining clips. And there you can see the whole panel's loose, and the retaining arms here, you have to lift the panel upwards and then withdraw it to be able to get it away. There's one the same the other side, and it helps lining everything up when you're putting it back together. Okay, you can see these clips clearly now. So as you can see, we had to lift it up first of all to get it over this, and then we have to drop it down to get this hook to release. Now that it's free, I can just pull it, lie it down on here, undo the various wiring connections and tuck that away for the moment. I've labelled both cables as is my way, because once everything's pulled out and kind of pushed back in behind the dashboard, if there are any extra wires that aren't being used, the white labels that I put on stuff helps me to differentiate between what needs to be reconnected and what was never connected in the first place. So now with the first top three multi-plugs undone, you can see why the cloth, I can lean this on here without damaging either the control, gear lever control surfaces or the front on the dash, just while I undo the last of the connections in the back here, and then I'm ready to take the panel away for the moment. Now that I can see better behind here, this wiring loom that I labelled earlier before disconnecting, I've actually found just loops across to the other side, so I don't need to disconnect either end, which is good because this end is well buried, but it does mean obviously I can remove the redundant label from this one and carry on. So I'm just going to put the main dash in. These get very dirty in use, and it had a rim of dirt around the outside, so I've taken the time to give that a clean before refitting it. It's just got some spring clips on the back here and the multi-plug, and then when that's in, we'll just put 2 screws to hold it steady, and that's all it takes. So there we go, main dash panel plugged back in, 2 screws refitted. Just going to get the decorative trim, and that just clips back into place. The dash trim piece has some metal clips and some plastic clips on the back, just making sure they're all in position before I push it back into place. That clips back in very easily, so it's onto the upper display now. As with the main instrument cluster, these two can get very dirty, so I've cleaned the glass right up. And again, as with the main cluster, there's some clips, a multi-plug, and this one has just the 1 screw to keep it steady. And then the decorative trims go back in afterwards. So that's all done. This trim just clips back in. Again, it's the same as every other one. It's got assorted metal clips all over it, so we just line it up and get busy with it. And then the top trim, same again, metal clips, plastic clips, line it up nicely. Nice firm hand, and it's all done. Next up is the head unit. There's 4 screws and the 2 hangers that hold it in, but first we've got to get all the multi-plugs plugged back in at the back. Got to be very careful with these because they absolutely don't like being dropped or manhandled at all. The hangers are these plastic guides inside the dash panel, and it rests on those first to take the load while the screws go back in. The wiring for the head unit only goes back in one way and everything's color coded, so that's nice and easy. Now, having made sure that the wiring for the hazards and the lower sets of wiring for the switches on the dash display are all out of the way, it's literally just a case of feeding this back in, and then you can see it actually hangs from these clips each side, and then the 4 screws will go back in. Next up, it's the fascia panel. We've got the wiring already put to one side for the hazards at the top here, and then the controls for the heating and the menu buttons. Those are just ready to go back in. And then, as when we took it out, we need to hang it from these arms first of all to get it roughly into position, making sure the tubes for the ventilation will line up properly. And then when we're happy that it's all in good position, it just spring clips back in with these metal spring clips. And as with all the other plastic bits on the dash, a delicate fist in the 4 corners will make sure that all the fittings are lined up. And there we are. It's just the side vents, the glove box and the knee panel, and obviously the steering wheel, and we're finished. There's yet another multi-plug to refit, this time for the square set of buttons that control the menu, etc. on the dashboard. But obviously, having labelled that earlier, I knew that I needed to leave it hanging out, so just going to plug that back in, and this just clips back into position. The knee panel to refit next, got a couple of multi-plugs and the air hose for the interior temperature sensor, and then I'm just going to screw these 2 blocks of switches back to the knee panel, and that will clip back in place too. The knee panel is clipped back into place with all the wiring refitted, and I've refitted the OBD2 plug and the white diagnostics plug, so that's all clipped back in place. So next it's just pop this up, 2 retaining clips to hold it in, and the nut, which can be done up finger tight, nice and easy. The fuse cover clips back in very nicely, and now it's time to deal with the A-pillar trim, which will just clip back into place as it came out, remembering of course to re-plug in the tweeter and to plug the green securing strap plug back into the hole that's in the A-pillar. As with the other trim panels, once everything's lined up, that just clips back in, and I just need to clip back in the window vent. The underside on this one was a little bit loose, so I've made sure all 4 clips are nicely secured. That'll just clip back in. Then I can refit the door rubber and go and do the other side. The air vent on the right hand side is a little different to all the rest because there's 1 screw hole in it. It doesn't just click back in, but it does have some spring clips to hold it in place, and then the screw goes in just to make sure it's really secure. The A-pillar trim is exactly the same as the other side, so just got to line everything up, put this green clip back on, re-plug in the speaker wiring for the tweeter, and then just make sure the retaining clips line back up and clip back into their respective places. Then the glove box goes back in, not forgetting the 2 connectors, one for the airbag switch, one for the glove box lamp. There's 4 screws along the top, 4 screws along the bottom. I've taken out the 2 that I put in to align the dash earlier, so they're now ready just to drop back in once the glove box is aligned and clip back into place. Once it's clipped back in, the door can be opened, top retaining screws can be put in, then the bottom ones, then the side panel here, and then after the side panel the rubber trim can be put back, and we're just ready to refit the steering wheel, and that's the job done. So the steering wheel goes back on with the marks that we made earlier lined up and the factory marks. Just going to pop the nut on. I'm going to hold the steering wheel while I do the nut up in the reverse of when I took it apart, just to make sure there's no stress on the steering column lock. and then it's onto the airbag. So the airbag is refitted in the steering wheel with all the connectors on. About to put the bolts back in. Need to be careful obviously now that they don't get dropped down inside the steering wheel housing, because it's not quite such an easy job to get them back, but they can be lined up and running relatively easily. So everything's come back up live after reconnecting the 12-volt battery, just making sure all the switches and so on work. Yeah, so we're all good. We can often get a whole sequence of error codes after airbag disconnection and replacement, so I'm just going to go into Leaf Spy here, service screen top right, settings, service screen enable, and that's done. Read the DTCs, and again read DTCs. There's going to be there's just the one airbag code, which is good. That's probably the one that's from the crash data recorder, which needs to be reset with console 3, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. Clear DTCs, airbag, clear and clear, and we'll just see what happens. If we're lucky, that will clear. It hasn't, so we just need to go and hook up to the consult 3. We can clear the crash data records from before. We'll be able to obviously put these lights out. This one's on because I'm not wearing my seatbelt, but the left hand one with the warning triangle up there because of the previous crash. But as you can see, no holes in the dashboard, no hole in the steering wheel, all the seatbelts are working, all is good.